Welcome to Mike's FJR Corner. Today we're doing the removal and installation of the front and rear rims as well as a tire change. So let's get started. We're going to start by removing the rear wheel. Using the 27mm socket, we're going to remove the axle bolt. Start by putting it on the axle bolt using a breaker bar and push down. Then I'll switch to a ratchet and finish removing the nut. With a 12mm socket, we're now going to loosen the pinch bolt. With the nut still on the end of the axle, take and tap with a mallet until it's flush. Remove the nut. Remove the washer. Finish tapping the axle. If you happen to have the ABS model, we need to remove the sensor. We do that by using this 5mm hex socket and remove the screw. Now that we have the screw removed, we can remove the sensor. We remove the sensor by slowly twisting and pulling out. And then once it's free, move the sensor to the side. Just above the swing arm and behind these hoses, there's a little bolt that goes through an arm that goes down to the caliper. We need to remove that bolt. I have a 12mm socket on the back side to hold the nut, and I'm using a 6mm hex on the front and remove the bolt. With a piece of wood underneath the tire to support the tire, we're now going to remove the axle. With a 14mm hex wrench, we're going to slide it into the axle, slowly turn the axle until it starts to come out. Cup your hand underneath the axle to catch the washer. Now that the axle's out, rock the caliper slightly to expand the brakes and slide the caliper down and out of the way. Now that the caliper's out of the way, we can remove the ABS plate. Remove the block of wood from under the tire, set it to the side. Slowly move the rim to the right, sliding it off the hub. Now that it's off the hub, slowly work the tire out from underneath the bike. Take a rag and remove the grease off the spline. With the rag, clean the splines in a differential, being careful not to knock out the sleeve inside. We're now going to remove the front wheel. We're going to remove the brake caliper by removing the two bolts using a 12mm socket. With a 4mm box wrench, take off the hose clamp. With the bolts now off, rock the caliper back and forth on the disc to loosen the brake pads, then slide the brake off. We're now going to work on the left side with a 4mm box wrench. Take off the hose clamp. We're now going to remove the ABS sensor with a 5mm wrench. With the bolt out of the ABS sensor, now twist and remove. With a 12mm socket, we're going to take off the two bolts. Twist slightly on the disc to loosen up the brake pads, and then slide the caliper off. With a 9mm Allen wrench, let's loosen up the pinch bolt. With a 19mm hex wrench, loosen the axle a couple turns. Now I'm going to lift the front end of the bike with this front end lift. This particular style lift has a flat plate with two prongs that stick out on each side. They fit underneath the front forks, and you slowly push down and lift the bike. Place a piece of wood underneath the front tire to support the tire. With a 19mm hex wrench, we're going to continue to loosen the front axle. With the axle loosened all the way, we're going to pull the axle out while holding the front wheel. Remove or loosen the wood underneath the front tire. Slowly roll the tire forward while making sure the sleeve and the ABS plate stay in place while you maneuver it out from underneath the bike. Now both the front and rear rims are removed from the bike. Take the sleeve out, clean it with a rag. Clean up the dirt around the bearing. Flip the tire over and remove the ABS cover. Clean any dirt or grease around the bearing. I'm ready to take the rims to the dealer to get the tires mounted and balanced. Before I install the rear tire, the first thing I want to do is take this opportunity to clean the rear end of the bike. With the tire out of the way, makes it easier to reach inside the wheel well. So I'm going to take my favorite degreaser and start cleaning. Next, we're going to clean the spline from any dirt or grease. We're going to remove the sleeve from inside the spline. Slowly pull straight out, set it to the side. We're now going to clean the sleeve and the axle. Take the sleeve and clean all the grease and dirt off. Now we're going to take the axle and clean all the dirt and grease off. I'm now going to apply grease to the splines. I'm using a Valvoline Dura Blend, synthetic blend of grease. I'll apply some to an applicator and apply it to the splines. Apply an even coat of grease to the sleeve. Slide the sleeve into the housing. We're going to apply the same grease to the splines on the rim. Spread the grease evenly around all the splines. Slowly work the rim under the fender of the bike. Now that the rim is in position, to help get it on the spline, I'm going to take the axle and temporarily slide the axle onto the rim. Grab the rim from the top and bottom, pulling towards you while rotating and wiggling up and down to pull it onto the spline. Place a piece of wood underneath the tire to help support the rim. Now that we have the rim on the spline and it's supported, we can now take the axle back out. Now you need to grease the rim seal. I'm using the Mobil 1 synthetic grease. Apply the grease to the inside edge of the seal on the rim. Clean off any excess grease. Slide the ABS plate into the seal on the rim. Now I'm going to mount the caliper. To make this process easier, I'm going to put an Allen wrench between the brake pads to hold the pads apart during installation. Now we're going to slide the caliper bracket onto the disc. Slide the disc between the two brake pads. Once the caliper is most of the way on, remove the Allen wrench and slide the caliper onto the disc till it bottoms, while aligning the hole in the top of the bracket with the axle. There is a notch in the ABS plate that lines up with the keyway on the back of the caliper bracket. Rotate the ABS plate until the notch locks into the bracket. Slide the spacer between the caliper bracket and the swing arm. Put a thin coat of grease on the entire axle. Slide the axle into the swing arm through the rim until the axle is fully seated. Place the washer and nut onto the axle. With a 27mm socket, tighten the nut. Torque to 92 foot-pounds. Clean off any excess grease. Place a towel over the swing arm. Slide the brake torque bar over the upper mount and insert the bolt. Put the nut in the back of the bolt. Insert a 6mm Allen wrench into the bolt. With a 12mm socket, lightly tighten the nut. Torque to 265 inch-pounds. Insert a 6mm Allen wrench into the lower bolt in the brake caliper torque arm. Put the nut in the back of the bolt. With a 12mm socket, lightly tighten the nut. Torque to 265 inch-pounds. Install the ABS sensor by carefully inserting the sensor into the plate. Torque to 265 inch-pounds. And lastly, we need to torque the pinch bolt to 141 inch-pounds. Now let's install the front rim. Apply a liberal coat of grease to the seal on the right side of the rim. Apply the coat of grease to the sleeve. Orient the smaller side of the sleeve toward the seal. With a twisting motion, insert the sleeve into the rim. Apply a liberal coat of grease to the seal on the left ABS side of the rim. Apply a coat of grease to the sleeve inside the ABS plate. With a twisting motion, insert the ABS plate into the rim. Apply a liberal coat of grease to the axle. This helps ensure the axle does not corrode. Now let's get the rim into position. Slowly slide the rim under the fender. You may need to tilt the rim slightly to clear the fender. Place a piece of wood under the tire to help lift the rim into position. There is a notch on the top of the ABS plate that lines up with the raised edge on the inside of the fork. Rotate the ABS plate so the notch lines up with the raised edge of the fork. Once the rim is raised into position, verify that the ABS plate is locked into the fork. Now let's slide the axle through the right side fork and rim until the axle is against the thread in the left fork. With a 19mm hex socket, screw the axle in by hand, turning it clockwise until the axle is flush with the right fork. With a torque wrench, tighten the axle to 53 foot-pounds. With a 6mm hex wrench, hand tighten the pinch bolt, then torque to 203 inch-pounds. Remove the wood. Check that the rim is tight on the fork and there is no side-to-side play. Make sure the rim is able to turn freely. With a rag, clean off any remaining grease. Now we can remove the lift and lower the front of the bike onto the ground. Now we're going to install the left caliper. With one finger, hold the brake pads apart while carefully sliding the caliper over the disc. Screw in and hand tighten both mounting bolts. Progressively tighten each mounting bolt by alternating between bolts. Torque the mounting bolts to 354 inch-pounds. Install the ABS sensor by carefully inserting the ABS plate with a slight twisting motion. Hand tighten the mounting screws. Tighten the screw using a 5mm hex wrench. Torque to 265 inch-pounds. Repeat the mounting procedure for the right caliber. I hope you enjoyed watching this video on removal and installation of the front and rear rims. If you liked the video, click on the thumbs up or click on the subscribe button. And I thank you for watching, and goodbye.